Okay, so we're going to review from the beginning and then bring us straight to here, because it's always good to, know where we're coming from and what we're trying to understand and achieve. But I'm going to repeat the questions even a little clearer now, so that when we're answering the questions, we know where it's coming from. Okay, so we're going to start. So we're going to do a review. So first, I'm starting with the questions. So based on the Sheva brachas, the 7 brachas of the groom and the bride. So the Alter Rebbe had a couple of questions, and the Rebbe said that every word is very selective, very chosen. So it's not random. So if it's a little different, even one little nuance, it's already has a whole different meaning. And the same thing when the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya. Every word was selected, and if we don't. Interesting, because when I'm having discussions with people now about how did the Alter Rebbe say this? Doesn't it contradict what we understand today? And my answer is no, actually, we misunderstood the Alter Rebbe in the past. If we now, with the information that we have, and you read the Tanya again, you actually understand that the Alter Rebbe wrote it right all the way straight from the beginning. We just misunderstood what the Alter Rebbe was saying from the beginning. And that was just like the Torah had a superficial understanding, right? And it was meant to be that way based on the vessels that the people, when they received the Torah, that's they were very coarse and, how do you call it, raw, and, the hunters, right? The hunters. So they were very different. They weren't very refined like we are now, So that's what they could contain, the very external understanding. So it was intentionally written that way, even the Tanya, where when at the time the Tanya was written, it was speaking to the audience in a way that it was understood a certain way, which was not the real meaning. And now that we understand, the Pnimius HaTorah, we could now look at it again and really see that the Alter Rebbe did not actually, nothing changed. He was writing the same thing all the time. We just didn't understand it. So now what are the questions? There's 5 questions. So first of all, why is the closing line of the 7th blessing a little different than the one that precedes it, right? When you make a blessing, you're saying Hashem's name. If you're going to say Hashem's name and repeating the same thing, that's Hashem's name in vain. So it must be that there's something very different. So the one that precedes it, the 6th one says, we bless God who gladdens the groom and bride, while the 7th one says who gladdens the groom with the bride. So there's a difference between that. It's such a big difference that it needs a whole new blessing, because it has a whole different meaning. So there's it's interesting, the 6th generation up to the 6th generation from the Rebbe, we still have the old way, right? Who gladdens the groom and bride, and the 7th generation, which is the 7th blessing, it's already talking about who gladdens the groom with the bride. It's sort of signifying that there's equality over here. There's no hierarchy, they're shoulder to shoulder, in each one being true to themselves for the 7th generation, for the 7th blessing. The second question the Alter Rebbe asks is, why is the 7th blessing stated with such urgency? Mehera odishama, quickly let it be heard. Okay, so why is it so urgent? What's so significant about bringing to fruition this state where God is going to gladden the groom with the bride? Okay, what's so important about that? The third question is, what's the connection between the raised voices of groom and bride, which is Mehera Yeshama, may it soon be heard, but Are Yehuda Kol Chasam V'Kol Kallah, right? So what's the connection? That same bracha talks about the voice of the groom and the bride, and then at the end it ends Baruch Atah Hashem Esameach Chasan Im HaKallah. So there's something about the voices, the 2 voices bringing a state of joy. Okay, there's a connection with joy, because it's talking about the voices being heard, and then it ends with that. Therefore, Hashem gladdens the groom and with the bride. Okay. Fourth question. Why is the blessing stated in the future tense? Mehera od yishama, may it soon be heard. Like, why is it not now? Like today, they got married today, 200 years ago, they got married today. Why shouldn't they have this joy that the seventh blessing is talking about? Okay, that's the fourth question. And the fifth question is, why is this prayer careful to explicitly mention the word voice, both in relation to the groom and the bride? It could have just said the voice of the groom and the bride. Why does it have to say the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride? It's making a very clear distinction. It's like, there's something different over here. Very, very different. There's two voices over here. Before it was like one big thing, the voice of the groom and the bride. But now it's very, very separate. There's the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride. Okay, so then the Alter Rebbe starts explaining that this explains, this foretells the time in the near future in regards to the Messianic days, the transformative era of the Messianic days, where we're going to start shifting into the Geula time, okay? And through the process of this shift of polarities of the masculine and the feminine, that will cause that the bestowing, which was before started from the masculine down to the feminine, it will invert, and then the feminine will bestow upon the masculine. Okay, so that's what, like in short, we're going to get into the details, but in short, that's what the difference between the two blessings signifies. That there's going to be, the Geula process is going to be this whole shift of polarities, and the feminine is going to start connecting to her light, which is a higher light, and then she is going to bestow upon the masculine. She's going to influence him. Before, the masculine was influencing the feminine. Whatever he understood, that's what you got. What you see is what you got. Now she could influence him, but of course, it's a very different way. It's a internal feminine. It's a whole different. It's an energy way, which is very different than the masculine. So the Alter Rebbe says that throughout the Galus, the masculine received from Chachma, like through his mind, right? He received everything through his mind, and that's what, like, from what he understood, he bestowed to the woman on a smaller level what she needed. He gave her, from what he understood, whatever she needed to be able to function the way she needed to function. He showed up the way she needed him to show up, or whatever he understood from what he understood from the Torah. But in the Geula era, right, this is going to shift, and this is going to invert, and the feminine is going to be the influencer to the masculine. So now the Rebbe wants to get into the shift of the polarities. He wants to really help us understand this whole shift and what's so significant about this shift. Like, what does it mean for us? What does it have a connection to Geula? What's this whole thing? So the Alter Rebbe starts with the fact that he starts explaining about the difference between the betrothal and the marriage. Okay, not in our days, but in the times past, when a couple was betrothed to each other, they were legally bound to each other, except that they did not have intimacy. Therefore, if they decided they don't want each other anymore, they needed a divorce. Okay, so it was more like a superficial relationship, right? They courted each other, they cared about each other, they did things for each other, but it was very superficial. There was no, intimate, like real intimacy. So the same thing, so as below, so too above. So God and the Jewish people, when Hashem gave us at Har Sinai the Torah, it was only a betrothal. It was not marriage. So it was a very superficial relationship where, you sort of like court each other, but you're not that connected. The bottom line is you don't have that deep internal bond. You're sort of committed to each other. It's a commitment. That's all it is. It's a commitment, but it's not that intimate relationship where you really get each other, you know each other, you understand each other, you show up in the way you need to. It's a whole different relationship, and that was not able to happen until more recently. Through now through more internal. Okay, now each generation more because that was how much they couldn't contain that much light because of how they were, right? They were very not refined. But through like doing the Torah mitzvahs, we became more refined. So we sort of allowed our bodies to become more light matter, you know what I mean? Like more light versus dense, right? And so we were able to like apprehend deeper and deeper aspects of Hashem. And so that's like called the relationship is ripening, becoming closer and closer. Even friendships, right? Friendships ripen. Like if you have a very good relationship, the more years you're really invested in each other, even though it's not it's you're more you know each other more, you know more about each other. So it's like it's a ripening. Okay, so that's that. Now let's see what else. Okay, we're still into the review. So so at the time of receiving the Torah, so only the external levels of Hashem's infinite light was revealed to the it was revealed as the wisdom of the Torah. It was very external. It's sort of like knowledge, right? Like Gemara, like somebody has a bright head and he could wow somebody with a very good pshetel. There was like more about the knowledge and who knows more. It's very, very superficial. And that's why you see a lot of times people could know a lot of Torah, but they don't internalize it. And they're like, who's the greater person? The one who knows thousands of pages by heart. It's very external and superficial, and give more respect for knowing more. But guess what? It's not about knowing more. It's about knowing God and having a relationship. And that means that you have to bring it down into your actions, into your heart, and act upon it, not just use it as a to show that you're greater than someone else. That's very, very superficial. It's knowing God so that you could allow God to be you, to manifest through you. And that's a whole different level. But it began with the knowledge, and that was like the main thing, to know the wisdom. It was wisdom. Okay, not knowledge, it was wisdom. Now but that was what was apprehensible to that generation at that point of history. And then as the years went on, the inner dimension of the Torah, the secrets hidden within the text, right? That same text that was more like wisdom before. The beauty and the brilliance of the Torah is that there's very, very deep secrets hidden within those words. And it's like the intimate knowledge of God. It's in there. And within that, it explains the deeper reasons behind the laws and the stories and the textual structure. So like on the superficial level, this is a law about this, and this is how we do this, and it's very external. We do that, and a lot of people who are very they're stringent about halacha, but yet, it's just about, they're sort of like active Jews, and in the heart, they're not really, or in their behavior, they may not be role models for Hashem. They could be judgmental, they could be not nice, they could be arrogant, right? But so it's very, very superficial, the laws. But inside the law, there's very, very deep secrets, and that's why when Mashiach comes, and we explained it last week, a lot of the laws may not be practiced anymore. But that doesn't mean it's not relevant, because the law is just sort of like an outside clothing for some deep understanding about Hashem. And we explained it last week, where it spoke about the hated son versus the son of the hated wife, which was the Bechor, versus the son of the loved wife, which was the second son. Which one is really the older one? Which one is considered the Bechor? And the answer is that it doesn't matter if you hate her or not. The older is the older. And the Rebbe said that's talking about the light of Tohu versus the light of Tikkun. The light of Tohu signifies the light of the hated son, because we always despised this light all this time, and we suppressed it because we didn't appreciate its value. But it's actually the higher light than the light of Tikkun, which is more about the rules. It's more about the superficiality. The higher light, which is about the heart and the passion, and the light in the world, that is really more connected to Hashem was the despised light. So even if you're never going to have that law again, the Torah is forever, because those deep meanings behind the laws are really what's going to be everlasting. And the Rebbe has a sikh about that in the Geula Sichas. Okay. Okay. Now, each generation exposes another layer of hidden light, and by the end of days, there'll be no secrets left, and the most inward and abstract beauty of the infinite light will shine through the Torah like a holograph, right? So it's just it's very similar. If you picture this idea where the law is like the external like picture, and then the deeper meaning, which is the light of Tov versus the light of Tikkun, it's sort of like a holograph. Like somewhere in the middle, there was some more meaning of it. There was more meaning. So like it's all one thing, but it appears like different, like a whole bunch of different things according to the generation. Now, the Eitz HaChaim marks a 10-step process from below to above through which a person achieves perfection. Okay, so it's talking about like Malchus and Yesod, and I believe all the spheres, and the highest level is Keser. Okay, so Keser, what's Keser? Keser is inner will and pleasure, and this is the source of all motivating impulses within our personality. Okay, now of course, just because we have that motivating impulse does not mean that we know how to channel it correctly, but there's a truth in it. There's always a truth. If it's coming from, if you have a desire for it, you have to figure out what's true about it and what's not. But this is actually like every person's different, right? And what makes us different is that through our crown comes different motivating impulses. Like, I like this, so I feel like doing this, versus somebody else likes this and feels like doing that. And how am I going to behave, in accordance, when something happens because I'm more chesed or I'm more this, everything, is according. So it comes through your crown. And that's the idea, that we're going to, through getting closer to the Pnimius HaTorah, the Alter Rebbe says, it's sort of like we're going to match up. The Pnimius HaTorah is actually connected to the way we are going to embody the truth of the Torah. Like through our actions, it's going to be one, because we're going to express, as we understand more and more of the truth of Hashem in the Torah, we're going to like sort of express that through our body, through our actions. And so it's sort of like going to be, that's how we become one with Hashem and the Torah. Now the Alter Rebbe talks about, you don't have to understand this, I'm just using this terminology in case you're interested. He talks about Atika, and then he talks about Tika da Atika. So what's Atika? So Atika, we learned when we had the chart with the higher 11 and the lower 11 and the 10, right? So remember we said the higher 11 is the Tohu light, and that is where like the most connected to Hashem's essence, right? And that's the feminine light. So Atika is that place where the higher 11 is receiving straight from essence. So that's Atika. And then Atika, the Atika is like a deeper place when we have Geula. But at this point, we could actually connect to Atika. This is the place that that man touches God. And it's the place where the inner hidden lights of the Torah form the inner layer of Atika, whose trait is spiritual bliss. So this is the source of pleasure. This is the source of our pleasure when we connect to Atika. So it's like the truth of Hashem in the Torah, and when we're connecting to the higher 11 light, which is like the deepest truth of Hashem in the Torah, that is when we connecting to spiritual bliss. It's like pleasure, the highest level of pleasure. Okay, if anybody has any questions, you could always let me know, interrupt. This is a review of what we learned, but I wanted to bring everybody up to date before we move on. Okay, anyone have a question? Okay, everybody's good. All right. So
yeah, Bracha.
Yeah.
Bracha, I have a question. Yeah, hi. This is Simcha Chaya.
Yeah, hi.
So, hi. So, what you're saying here is that the Atika, which is the higher 11. Okay, so you're saying it's the hidden lights of Hashem, like where we go the closest to Atmos. And so my question is, do we come to spiritual bliss and pleasure through the hidden lights of Hashem in the Torah, or it's the other way around? It's through pleasure and spiritual bliss that we access the high lights of Hashem in the Torah.
Okay.
Like
so it's really one and the same, and that's what we're sort of coming to appreciate. It's that when we're connected to this light, which is our inner will and pleasure, which comes through to us, right? Which is when we're connected to this, to a higher 11, right? So we're connected to our panemius, and right, we go within. What do I need right now? What does my body? What does my soul body want to do right now? What, right? All that being energy, or being in the moment, whatever. That tuning in, that is actually the parallels the deepest truth of Hashem, which is in the Torah. So it's like, it's, like, okay, that's the next thing we might do is the Yirmiyahu, where it says that in the future, when the feminine surrounds transcends the masculine, so I'm going to we're going to be able to keep the Torah because Hashem is going to communicate through our bodies. And this one, it says, this one you're going to be able to keep. The other one was not like, the other one was sort of cookie cutter, like everybody's one, and it really didn't fit your truth. And everybody's trying to be like everybody else, and was very confusing, right? The way it's not another Torah, it's the Chitzonius understanding. But when we're tuned in to our body and to our panemius, that is Hashem's Torah that we're understanding. And then we're always learning, so we really couldn't really appreciate that is what Hashem is saying. You know what I mean? It's like when we see it in the Torah, we're sort of like revealing that this is the truth of Hashem. So it's like,
it's like it starts in your experience and in your living it. And then when you learn it, you're like, oh, like this is what I'm experiencing. This is what
this is what now I understand what it says over here, Kaka, like that, Yeah, so it's like we're healing and we're learning, and we're understanding it, and then we're like, oh, now that I lived it and experienced it, and now I really understand what Hashem was saying over here in this pasuk or in this, So it's like it's
like intuitively you end up, but my question is like this. Okay, let's say, I guess most of the people that are doing the Machos curriculum and learning all this, so there are people that are, their whole life they've been, from and keeping Torah mitzvahs. Like, does this, a person has to be learning constantly to be able to be in tune with what, like the pleasures of their, and be in the present, tuning in and all that. Like, doesn't it go hand in hand? Like it's a little scary, like to say, I don't know, I'm just thinking like, because we have all the boundaries. We have so many boundaries around Torah mitzvahs, but someone that doesn't, or let's say they start learning, how could they tune into that? Like, that's my question, I guess.
How do they know that what they're tuning into is actually what the Torah is saying? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, something like that. That is Hashem's will.
You know what? I want to stop the share for now. Like, I'm wondering, like, why am I putting on the page when I'm not even, like, we could see everybody. What do we have to? Okay, we're not even learning it yet, but whatever. Okay, so that is the thing. The thing is like this. If you understand about the unity of the masculine and the feminine, right? So what's the whole, what's the beauty of it? The beauty is that the Tohu light is the higher light. At the same time, the Tikkun, which is the masculine, allows you to channel it correctly. You need both. So it's not like, oh, okay, my heart, I'm feeling like this. Wait, okay, you're feeling like this. Now bring in your wisdom, your Torah wisdom, and see how it fits in. You know what I mean? It's a whole, we don't push away the masculine part, which is the rules and we try to see like what is taka true, and we put it together, and then we figure out how to channel it correctly. And then also when we learn the Tanya, we're like, oh, you can understand the Tanya even more. So you have to also do it with bittul, meaning like you have to also be open to realizing that the way you understood things, even in the Torah before, may not be the way, the deepest truth of Hashem. You know what I mean? So we're not changing halacha or anything, but there's a lot of things that we have to start seeing differently within things that are not like what are we changing now, right? What are we changing? Things that are not halacha. We're talking about being able to be true to yourself. That's not against halacha, right? So we're not, we're just coming home to ourselves. Like, does it say anywhere in the Torah that you have to make the 5-course meals? Right? So all these things that we're learning, that we were so into the superficial, and we thought we don't get to go to Olam Haba if we don't make 5 things, and all that, we're realizing it's just not Hashem's truth. You see what I'm saying? So it's like through coming home to ourselves and tuning in, we're starting to take all the parts that are really not true about our understanding of Hashem and Yiddishkeit, and let that fall away, and really stick with the truth and showing up to what's truth. What does Hashem really want? Like and I saw this in the Tanya, because I learned the Tanya when I was older, and I had a lot of questions, because I went to not Chabad school, and it's all about Gehenim, and to me it was like, how do I escape Gehenim? And everything is like, everything was about like earning my ticket to heaven. It was so about that, and I was jealous of people who were more spiritual than me and more that, because they're for sure going to Gan Eden and I'm not. And my whole life was consumed. It had nothing to do with God. Then when I learned the Tanya, it's like everybody's different and everybody has to express themselves differently. It's right there. Every neshama, like it says, the process of how the neshamas were formed. Therefore, everybody's different. So if you're meant to be a wagon driver and you're a Talmud Chacham, you're not serving Hashem right. And if you're meant to be a Talmud Chacham and you're being a wagon driver, you also, everybody has to be tuned into what they really are. But did we ever follow the Tanya? No. People weren't living the Tanya. The Tanya says you have to be true to yourself. There's so many things in the Tanya that I saw, because I came to it with all my questions, with mature eyes, and I came with a clean slate, because I didn't have any prior conceived notions of what it was. So I was looking for the answers, and I saw that's how I got into these, in the Tanya itself. We were just not understanding it right, and we were living, and then we would quote the Tanya, the Tanya says, and I say, oh, I see something else over here. I see the Tanya says this, and people would say, oh, you're right. Like I could out-argue everybody. Because like people would say, oh, where does that say? I said, right here. I'm like, nobody ever got further than that, because they're misunderstanding it based on, it's very similar to the Torah, based on previous density. They only saw it this way. But I didn't come with that. I came with different eyes. I was very thirsty. So I was like, I don't see that at all. And then it was like, wasn't I had to convince anybody. When I showed it to them, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, so like nobody ever argued, it was like, it wasn't like I was trying to impose something new. They just were so used to seeing it in a whole different way, in an old way, which was not really the essence of the Tanya. So the same thing.
I think also, Bracha, like when even though I'm hearing these things all the time, and I'm trying to live it, like every time you say, you hear the newness of it, because it's so not what we're hearing even outside this, this space, this beautiful space. And in a way, it's like, okay, this is like the comfort zone has been, to be in the box, to do like this. And then if you can achieve it, great. If not, you're like out of the box and whatever. Even though I think our youngsters are showing us much more, that there's so many different ways to serve Hashem. They're like, really showing us, like they're like, no, like there's different ways to live.
Exactly.
Right. And the thing is that it does feel like a Mitzrayim, like the other way, which is like, like I'll give you an example. Yesterday they were posting about the time to daven, for Mashiach. I could not relate to that. That was so in a box. And I'm not saying I don't ask for Mashiach, and I don't say Ad Masai and whichever way I do it, but I don't know. It looked just too much like, okay, let's do it now. And then that's it. Then we're done with it. Like, I can't, I don't know. It was just, I don't know if other people had that, but it didn't speak to me. I was having a conversation with somebody else at that time. And that spoke to me, to have that conversation with them. But what I'm trying to say is that I guess this is very new. It's just very new. And a lot of people, I guess, also like how to explain it to them. I mean, again, I know you said like, we don't have to explain it to them. They're just going to come to the truth, whichever way.
Right. 100%.
It's, yeah.
Because somebody who's ready and open is bittul. When there's bittul, there's no peace. Like they're like, I'm thirsty. Like how did I come to Tanya? I was so thirsty, so hungry. Like, I need answers. Everything was answered, So the same thing, when somebody's coming with bittul, they're ready, they want to know, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? Whatever you say, they're like, oh, it'll click. Yeah, Taka, that makes sense with whatever, they're ready for it. When they're not ready, they're so closed, they're just in a different place. And it's not, Hashem breaks you open when you're ready, and you're ready to live that Geula life. But there's people that sort of, the people who are now understanding it and changing, transforming their lives are the people who are sort of, right, when we're connected to the 11 light, we're sort of like breaking open all the blockages for everybody. So you don't have to worry if not everybody's ready, because the more we heal ourselves, the more we're cleaning up the energy. And then when people are ready, I think they'll like click to it much faster. We probably had to take a few years till, even now, we're still understanding it more and more and more. There's deeper and deeper, and you have to keep on, relearning it. And every time you understand it, like the same thing I could say 10 times. And I understand each time I understand it deeper. Oh, now I have a friend, we have permission to say things 1,000 times. I'm like, you should see what I understood. I said, I know I said this in time, but now I'm really, and the next time it's like, but this is a deeper level of the same exact thing. It just, blockages keep on opening, and you get it more and more and more. So it's like sort of paving the way, so that, just like Hasidus, right? Hasidus, now everybody, like the whole world sort of accepts Hasidus, but the Hasidim had to pave the way. And then everybody saw that there's such truth and there's such connection to Hashem. And so that's the same thing. So there's people who Hashem chose to do this work, and there are people who have other missions. Everybody has different missions. So, it's not a problem. Like, I don't feel like Geula is not going to come if everybody doesn't get it. It's because it's like, you see from this mimer of the Alter Rebbe, it's like slowly but surely, he says it. The more vessels we, the more we expand ourselves and incorporate it, internalize it, then Hashem gives us more. This is exactly what the Alter Rebbe is saying. So, and the Alter Rebbe is saying, even the Geula process, it's like, we try it on for size, we get it better, we connect to it. Okay, now I'm giving you a new level, a deeper level. So I can't imagine, the Alter Rebbe is saying that the reason why they passed out by Matan Torah is because they didn't have the vessels. Can't imagine that all of a sudden, in 1 second, without us even internalizing it, just by screaming, Mashiach is gonna. That's my personal thing, And listen, time has proven that was number one is that it's a process, basically from our own growth. We could see that it's a process. That's the bottom line. What I was yesterday, I'm not today, and I'm become more connected to Hashem and more one with Hashem and more let go and more surrendered. So we see that it's taka process,
Right. Also,
can I make a comment?
Just quickly, just to finish this. Sorry, someone wants to take my. Just to finish this thought, I was thinking about the thing of saying Ad Masai yesterday. I was thinking that the Rebbe would sing, "We want Mashiach now." The Rebbe would say Ad Masai. The Rebbe sometimes would say, "Now we need Simcha." Like, it was very in tune for the moment, and I think the way I was feeling it was like the Rebbe was like teaching us like to be in tune with that. Sometimes it was a time to scream Ad Masai. Sometimes it was time to sing it. Sometimes it was like the Rebbe was tuning into the energy of that moment. I mean, Tismach, it was just singing, and it was very Leibedik and Chayas. That was the year the Rebbe passed away. It's like the Rebbe was very in tune with the energy of that moment. That was the example for us. Like, so for everyone, okay, now everyone's going to say it at this time. Of course, I'm not Chas v'Shalom diminishing the time of tefillah, but it's also, if somebody doesn't, maybe someone connects with giving tzedakah, maybe someone connects with doing Avas Yisrael, maybe someone wants to take a nap, take care of themselves in that way. To bring you
and we also have to, and there's one more thing that, not that we shouldn't say it. Whoever wants to, whoever did it, beautiful. Like just to say it together is a beautiful thing. But there's also, there's also a level which we see in the Gula Sifas where the Rebbe says that we should realize, when we realize that we're worthy of Geula for no reason. I remember seeing that. For no reason, that's when Mashiach is going to come. It's like,
wow.
I don't have to do anything to deserve it. So like sometimes, like today I was thinking, I wanted something, whatever, I want something to move forward. And I said, okay, maybe in the schos of this, I'm like, what do you mean the schos? If I don't give the class for, no matter what, I deserve it. Then look at the Pashas Truma, the Sicha, right? Because that's who we are. We're born to be, kings and queens and wealthy. A king and queen never has to do anything to earn their title. And so we have to get out of that whole belief that we have to do everything. But we rather have to do is believe without a doubt that we are worthy. That's Dad Masai. It's like to ourselves, how long is it going to take for you to believe that you're worthy of being one with Hashem and a revelation? That, like, Ad Masai, are you going to take so long and still think that you need something to make you worth something? So it's like a whole different level, which the Rebbe says in the book. And Rivka, you wanted to share something? Rivka?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to make two comments about what Simcha Chai. And the first one is that what you teach, and I live it. I see it over and over so many times, so many examples, and I know other people in the group have also seen it, that when we shift, and I know Simcha Chai also has mentioned it maybe on the group, that when we do the work and we shift, we see other people changing. Mm-hmm. We just see it. It's 100%. Like, what? The person is, whether it's a family member or sometimes just random people. So we think that, oh, how are we going to get through? Or like, we're the only ones and they're living it differently. And, all of that. So that's like that for me, that was a big validation.
Right. And that's what, let me just add to that 1 second, Rivka. So that is exactly what the Alter Rebbe is saying, is the feminine, being a feminine mashpia is by us. That's a beautiful thing. It's like silent. We're doing the work and they sort of get out of their box. It's the most beautiful thing. Yeah. So Rivka, I'm just, yeah. And you wanted to say something else.
And you see it, you act, then that's like what you said before, we live it and then we start to see it. And it's like, oh, that's what it means, because we start living it and we see it actually happening.
Yeah.
And then the point.
That's the thing. That when we're living it, we could only understand it after we live it. And that's why we keep on understanding levels, because like you could see the words from today to tomorrow. Did I really understand when I started teaching it about what it means that a woman is soiviv, right? Isha to soiviv gever. Did I really understand it? I understand it now. Now I understand it, because now we're seeing more than ever before how when we connect to our higher level, we are pashut influencing people without even telling them what to do. Now I understand what it means. Till then, it was very theoretical. But when you live it and you see how things are changing around you without you saying anything, usually, or if you tell someone you believe in them and then, whatever, and that's enough, then you understand it. Now you understand it. Now you could go even deeper and deeper. And then, so that's beautiful. Thank you, Rivka. Okay.
Can I say something? Then the second point.
Yeah. 1 second, Rivka. Want to say something? Yeah, Rivka.
Yeah, just one more little point.
Sure.
Is that also on what Simcha Chai is saying, and it also always like was a question mark in my mind as well. Like, like if the big Rebbeim or like the big, Chashava, Gazha, whatever you want to call them, the people, they're not learning this. And we're like, how is it possible that this is true, and what they're, why is this true and that, and their way is not? But it says, and I don't even know where it says it, that, it's going to be from the simple people. The Geula is going to come through the simple people, not through the big leaders and the big, and Reuven Wolf also just gave a talk about, he was talking about that.
Wow.
And brought that point out.
Right.
That
because it's not anymore through the wisdom. It's not anymore through the Torah wisdom, through the lower 11 than the 10. It's now coming through the body and the heart, which is the simple people, that's what they connect to more, right? Because they're not intellectual, Badafka. And before the Torah was more of an intellectual thing and about how to figure out the rules and how to figure out, which is very important to a certain extent. But what's the pneumius of Hashem? What's Hashem's real truth? And what does he really want? That you first have to connect to the pneumius within you, within your heart, and connect to that Tohu light and tune in. And then you could connect the two together. You could see what parts are really expressing Hashem and what parts are the ones we made up or society made up or all that, and eventually halacha has to conform with that, which was quite interesting last year. I was so excited when we just had Corona come out, and the Rav in Crown Heights, I forgot what his name was, he was a new way of cleaning for Pesach, all of a sudden, like, and I was like, wow, is that geula or what? He said, lock all your closets, don't clean anything. Just keep it simple. The main thing is to be in a good mood, and as long as it's not real chametz. And I'm like, Baruch Hashem, the Torah is matching what we're understanding. So it's sort of, they catch up. You know what I mean? The halacha started, like, so that's
and this year Purim, it's also like, don't worry about your shalchmanos.
You have to hear. Yeah, I loved it. You know what I did? I ordered online Reisman's Bakery, and now it's too late, whatever. And I want to give Reisman's Bakery, they sell these boxes of like beautiful, like it looks like a Purim box with 8 individually wrapped hamantashen. Very pretty. And the shipping is cheaper than if I would buy something and ship it to myself. Because I have a lot of people all over that I send, my kids and my relatives and whatever. So it was so much fun. I just like, instead of shopping and schlepping and this and that, because we don't have so much time, I went onto there and I sent them the box, it looks beautiful, and they even write a card for you. And my whole, Purim's done. And now I'm ready to celebrate. We're ready up to the meal. We're, thinking, what are we going to eat? And, now all the work is done. I just, through the computer, sent out a few things. And so like, it just makes it more guladik. It's like, now we can really, now we're getting into getting ready for the meal, versus the whole time we're so busy shopping and schlepping and packaging. And, I was like, this is my geula Purim. So yeah. Anybody else wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Okay.
So basically, when you said, I love how you said that, like, first you're thinking there's something that you wanted to move forward in your life, and you said, okay, this chos of this share, they're like, no, I deserve it anyways. I deserve it no matter what. It's so beautiful because it reminds me of how I remember there was somebody who asked the bracha from the Rebbe, and he says, ask my wife, because my wife's bracha, Rebbe Simchai Mushka's bracha is from Saive Kalamin, right?
Wow.
And my bracha is from Emailei Kalamin. So her bracha is going to manifest no matter what, even if you're whatever. You don't have to
on anything, right? The Rebbe used to say make a keli, right? But when it comes to the Rebbetzin, you don't need a keli. You're just worthy.
Exactly.
You have to be royal blood. Like, what's Ad Masai to me? Ad Masai, till when are you going to realize that you're royal blood? Get it into your psyche. When are you going to realize that you don't have to do anything? If you wake up as a king and a queen, and your job is to allow people to shower you with everything. That's your job. And if you deny them this pleasure, they don't want to support you anymore. That's, right? The royal family, if they take such pride in how they throw thousands of millions of dollars on the royal, they used to, right? Onto the royal family, because they gave them such a pleasure. By being Malchus, it gives England prestige. So we have to connect to that. And the more we stop saying I have to make a keli for something and start owning Parshas Truma. This is who I am. It's my birthright. It's my destiny. That's it. And that's why I'm supposed to have it. That's it. And to really believe it, I'm sure I have work to do on really believing it. You know what I mean? So that's why Mashiach is not here. It's not just, you see what I'm saying? Like, when we really believe in Mashiach will be, I promise you, but it takes a lot of work to believe it. So Hashem gives you different things to start getting you to start believing it. But it's a process. We have to undo everything we did before and feed the new information into our system.
Yeah, we have to unlearn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Bracha, you know what, also I'm remembering what you're saying also about, they said about the fast also, that whoever, you know, had the virus or didn't or whatever, I don't know, they didn't have to fast. But you know also what while you're saying this, you know what I'm thinking also, like when a Kallah gets married, and she gets a ring and a diamond ring, and then she gets this jewelry, and then she gets this, and she gets new stuff, and she gets everything to set up her home, and then she gets this gift, and like, and she doesn't have to do anything. It's just the fact that she got married.
She's a Kallah. That's it. I'm a Kallah.
Exactly.
For no reason.
And also when she's right, exactly. So you were saying about Matan Torah that we were betrothed, like we were engaged, but then with Mashiach we're married. So just for the fact that we're Hashem's wife.
Exactly.
And you know, Hashem wants to beautify us and give us, and you know,
that's it. And what better husband than Hashem himself? Who could do anything and have everything. That's like, according to the husband you're married to, that's your status, right? Who are we getting married to? Who are we? Is Hashem himself. I think, you know, the sky's the limit. Infinite. Yeah. Okay. So I hope we covered everybody, and we'll move a little bit. Okay, let's move on a little. Okay. So the outer layer of so Atika is that the place where the higher leaven meets essence, right? The Torah light meets essence. Now the letters of the Torah is the outer layer of Atika is the letters of the Torah, which was revealed by Har Sinai, and then so at that time is only appreciated for external revelation of light, which is the rules and the intellect and the wisdom. But these letters always held a vision of perfection and motivate and inspire the world to move towards the realization at the end, because it's sort of like Hashem's, it's the crown, right? So the crown has the wisdom, the will, and the pleasure. So even though only when we received the Torah, we only like understood the very external aspects of these letters, they also contain with them the drive to get us to where we are right now, to like get into our panemius and start tuning in and start connecting to that higher light and the inner wisdom. So each generation daily mines new jewels from its rich quarry. I'm just quoting what it says there. And eventually our tunneling will reach the bedrock core of consciousness itself. Consciousness itself is mamish like receiving straight from Atzmos, everything the way it's meant to be, the way Hashem intends it. The pure
what page are you on? What page?
It's not a page. I'm just reviewing this is the review, getting up to, I just quoted a few things that sounded good, you know. The pure ecstasy of Atika will erupt into the world and infuse all living things with rapture, inaugurating a new era of blissful union with Hashem, called the delight of the king in his essence, as described in the book Emek HaMelech, which I don't know where that book is, and I have not read it. So now, remember last time we talked about three things, three ways that the king experiences the light in his essence. And these are the three things that we already spoke about when we learned the Chaf B'Shvat Sicha. Remember I said from one act, when we connect to our higher 11, right? So we're connecting to that Tohu light, which is mamish sourced in the essence. We're accomplishing three things. And it's so interesting how the Alter Rebbe says exactly those same three things. So number one is the delight of face-to-face unity. It allows for Kudsha Brichu and Shechina to reunite, right? All the Malchus Avaida is about when we're becoming true to ourselves, and we're in alignment with our light, so that the masculine could be true to their selves, and so each one could show up in a face-to-face way, the way they're meant to be, so that together they reveal something even more beautiful than each one on their own, and they're not confused. Oh, now we need a little feminine input. Okay, now the masculine tries to figure out a solution to that, and then the feminine says, okay, that sounds good, but how about this? And then together, till they have something even better than each of them together. But what's the influence that brought this about is that we connected to that higher level, which is straight from essence. So that is the delight of this unity, which comes about through connecting to essence. When we connect to higher light, we're sort of drawing down that light of essence, and sort of like Hashem is now involved in this, because we're each being true to ourselves. And that is sort of like the delight of the unity brings tremendous delight to Hashem's Atzmos. That's one. And then there was the second one was the delight of Hashem when he reunites with his lost sparks, the Tohu sparks, right, which were strewn throughout creation, right? And they're very high light and like the shattering of the vessels. And when we connect to that higher level and we reveal the holiness in all these things that we suppressed ourselves from, including the emotions, the body, the physicality, pleasure, self-care, anything in the world, healing modalities, all these things, science, math, whatever it is. So then Hashem is reuniting with those pieces of himself. So that gives him tremendous pleasure. And the third pleasure that Hashem is getting from the same thing, that it's the feminine who are doing this, right? The feminine are the ones who are giving Hashem all this pleasure, because we're the ones, that's why we're credited with bringing Geula, because this is our light. And we're finally able to allow Hashem through us to have all these amazing pleasures. And the third one is the state of being, which Chavi loves. Where's Chavi? The pleasure of the state of being, which is the natural vibration of Hashem's being. And that is pleasure. To just, when we're being, when in a state of being, there's a state of pleasure. There's a certain pleasure. And we don't always want to just sit there and be, but when Hashem wants to be and we tune into that and we be, then there's a very great level of pleasure. And then through that being, Hashem will tell us, now I want to express myself in this way. And that is, again, revelation of Atzmos, because it's not coming from our head, it's coming from our being. Whatever comes from our heart and from our body, that influence is the influence from Atzmos. So these are all different pleasures.
Can you say the first? I missed the first,
the first
one. There was
it creates a face-to-face unity, and it sort of like brings Hashem's essence into revelation. When, right, all the Malchus work that we were doing, which was to create that face-to-face unity by us being true to ourselves, right? How do we become true to ourselves? We sort of like connect to our essence, right? From the, we tune in. That allows the masculine to tune into their essence, because we're taking back our light and we're letting them keep theirs, okay? Now the unity sort of like allows Hashem to be fully expressed in the way, the Atzmos to be fully expressed in the way he's meant to be. That means men are being real men, women are being real women, and there's this miraculous outcome where everything works and everything's easy, all that. So that's like when bring true.
The first one is bring true to ourselves, and the third one is beingness. It's different. Okay, right. That's what I wanted to understand.
Right. It's like sort of living in a way that is true to yourself. It's like living in a way that's true to yourself and coming more home to yourself, which allows for the masculine to come home to themselves, and then we know how to like bring the two together in the way that we're meant to, and so that like everything, like the unity expresses Hashem's Atzmos, because you're expressing your Atzmos, he's expressing his, and everything sort of flows, and there's no friction, because everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and everybody's doing what they're exactly meant to do, because Hashem is letting them know from within how they're supposed to show up. And
in short, like if I put it in bullet points, the three are living authentically, and then utilizing all the gifts and the beauty and wisdom that Hashem put in the world, and no more dichotomy and separation.
Meaning the lights of the Tahu, yeah.
Right, and then the third one is
the pleasure of being.
Beingness.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, when we're tuned, when we want to, whatever, when we know we should be in that, but we're always living anyway in that state. It's like we're supposed to be living in that state. That's a state of surrender. That is a great, pleasurable state. And within that state, sometimes we're just being like that, and it just feels amazing just to be, And sometimes we're like doing through our being, like, and now through my being, I feel like I want to do this, and it works because it's what Hashem wants. So there's that unity, that everything flows, everything comes too easy. You don't have to chase things come to you, because it's when you're revealing Atzmos, things come. When you're stuck in the old way where you think you have to control, then Hashem says, oh, you want to do it yourself, and you want to be influenced by external things, okay, you're gonna have to work hard to get it to happen. But if you're true to yourself, then Hashem could show up, the masculine part of Hashem could show up in the way that is meant to be. And
Bracha.
Yeah.
question. I'm curious, like, if these points are exactly in the mimer, because like we were talking about before,
Right.
it's so easy to see in the Torah the opposite ideas, the ideas of like, just do it, iskafia, you know, I don't know. And
yeah, these
I would
points
love
are
to
in the
see
mimer. Yeah.
inside. Okay, so
Yeah.
so you're just reviewing still, basically.
Right. So what I'm doing is, the thing that I shared is the explanation of the translation of the words or something. Sorry, Yehuda's, what's her name? Who wrote this whole? I forgot her name. So she wrote like you have the words posted, right? But she elaborated on it. Okay.
Okay.
We're on page 14 of the mimer. Okay, so she you look at the words, that's what it's saying, and then she explained it in English, you know. So
Okay.
so you can match, possibly, if you read the Hebrew, you'll understand it even better, because she wrote this years ago. So based on her understanding at that time, now we're already more in it and living it. So now when we read it, we probably can explain it even better than what she did. But I'm just going with her English because it takes way too much time to go and
translate. Okay.
Yeah, we have so many things that we want to learn.
Okay.
And yeah. Okay. So now, so those are the three things. Yeah. And as this is what the Rebbe said, as Kallah Yisrael absorbs the deeper and more mystical teachings of the Torah, they become enlightened, literally. And these pleasure states achieved through putting these awarenesses into action will bring us to the time when every question will be resolved, every suffering will be explained, because, listen to this, pleasure creates an expansion of awareness. So it's like a catch-22. The more we connect to the higher Torah lights, the more we're open for more secrets of Hashem to be revealed and to have even more pleasure with Hashem, right? Because remember the Rebbe said that what's the whole point of the women connecting to this light in Chafesh Vatzicha? Because we have to create an Harchavas Hadas. And Harchavas Hadas, the more open we are, the more bittul we are, sort of, to now connecting even deeper to Hashem. And even experiencing more pleasure, because the more we're true to ourselves, the more Hashem, you know, whatever, all these three things, the more we're in line with these three things, the more pleasure we experience. And Hashem experiences it through us. Okay, now I'm going to, it's already 2 o'clock, but I just want to learn a little bit. Let's do at least one page. So let me get to but it's important to keep on, you know, you can read it 100 times and every time you read it, it's, you know, it's new. So that's why it's not even though we reviewed it, it's always, because we have more discussion and everything. Okay, so up to page 15, I believe. 15. Okay. Okay, so okay, page 15. So what it's saying here, we can even look at the Hebrew words. Okay. I'm just going to read this in Hebrew just to show you what it says in Hebrew, and I'll translate it. V'hinei hagam shebizman matan Torah lo nigle rak okay, I don't know. I think it means the aspect, and I can't see the words clearly. Chitzonius ha'ara bilvad mikol makam gam b'chaya pnimius ha'ar nimshach uba gam hu lemata. Hashem al har Sinai v'kasheyered yarad b'chol asmusai. So what? Okay, so now what is it saying here? So I'll just translate myself, and then you'll see how she's translating it. So even though at the time Matan Torah, they only received an external aspect of the revelation of Hashem, like chitzonius understanding, and that was more like the laws and that stuff. Nonetheless, at the same time, Hashem included in that revelation was the infinite light, which had all the deep secrets that we're slowly uncovering in those same words. Why? Because it says Vayered Hashem al Har. So the entirety of Hashem came to the mountain. So it was like, even though they only received a certain understanding based on what they were able to contain, the entirety was sort of like contained in what they received, because Hashem came down b'chol atzmusay, within his entire essence. Okay, so now let's see how she explains it. So this is what she writes. While it is true that only the outer layers of the infinite light were actually revealed at Sinai, nevertheless, the inwardness of the infinite light did come forth into the lower worlds at that time, as the Torah itself attests, and Hashem, right, the Atzmus of Hashem came down upon Mount Sinai. When the verse anthropomorphically describes Hashem coming down, it is teaching that the actual source of light, which is the infinite light itself, Atzmus, came down into this world. This is qualitatively different from all other revelations, which are encounters with the aura surrounding the luminary, but not with the actual body of light itself. Okay, so that's, you see how, I mean, it's pretty much what those two lines are saying. So she's explaining it. It's pretty much the same thing. Okay, so now we're not going to do the Hebrew, but I'm just showing how it's basically she's elaborating on what it's saying. So this is the Nekudas that the Alter Rebbe is saying. Another proof that the inwardness of the infinite light came down at Har Sinai, although it was not actually revealed at that time, is the fact that Hashem began his revelation of Torah with the word Anochi, right? It's so interesting how this is so connected to the Chafesh Ratzicha, because the Rebbe says that when we connect to the feminine light, revealing the eye of Hashem is the same eye of the created, right? The Bayre, the eye of the Bayre is the same eye, the Anochi. So it's interesting how it's right here as well. The Anochi, when Hashem, gave the Aseret Dibros, when he said Anochi, he was revealing, his essence, which is actually what comes through when we connect to our Pneumius, to our heart, through our heart and our body, the innermost parts of our heart. The first command reads, I am Hashem, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. That aspect that Hashem refers to as I is a level of consciousness identified with the innermost point of the sphere of Keser. This is exactly what we learned in the Chafesh Ratzicha, and that's why when we're transforming all our feelings, when we do the healing trigger technique, so we're taking the feelings which are false beliefs about ourselves, and then we transform it into I am this, I am that. Why? Because that Anochi is the same Anochi that is the innermost point of the sphere of Malchus, of our Malchus. So it's the same, the truth of Hashem that comes through when we connect our Pneumius. The Anochi that revealed itself in the Aseret Hadibros is the same. So I'll just say, V'gam Harei Amar Anochi Misha Anochi Zehi B'chaya Pneumius HaKeser Kiyadua. Okay, so it's basically saying the same thing. Okay. This parts of associated with this point is Atika Datikun, okay, which is like the deepest, it's like the essence of Hashem, versus when we're talking about Atika, we're talking about the Tohu, the higher 11, which is the Tohu, which is sourced in essence. But Atika is essence itself, okay? The infinite light hidden inside the Torah, the source of holy pleasure and infinitely expanded awareness. And the beauty is that holy pleasure is actually in the physical and in the mundane, which is quite eye-awakening, because it's the light of Tohu and the lost, pieces of that, that light, that without boundaries and all that stuff. So that is like the holiest thing. What's the whole, right? Shabbos. What makes Shabbos holy? Pleasure. Because that's what takes you from mundane takes the day from mundane to holy is the pleasure that you because it takes you out of your limitations. It allows you to love God more. It connects you to God. When you're not stressed out, you're more connected to God. When you're stressed out, you're less connected. So what we thought was holy, which was to iskafia. That's a very chitzonius holiness, but there's a deeper holiness, which is ishapcha, which is actually using all the light in the Tohu and connecting to Hashem in that way, in a very expansive, pleasurable, enjoyable, peaceful, not creating your own stress kind of way, and being very in tune with, living this very, let go kind of, joyful life by choice, conscious, joyful life. that is actually the holiness, which is quite interesting. What we used to think was holy, what I used to remember, I told you I was the Snagden and I was trying to get to heaven. That was the holiness that I connected to. And in Hasidus and the Pnimius, we actually see the holiness is actually the world itself, but we use it in a way of connecting to Hashem and not a way of destroying an addiction. We're using it like we're very in tune and we consciously choose it. What's going to put me in a good state? That is how we are holy. I mean, just see how we're behaving when we're connected to it and we're with our family and there's such love and there's such calmness. I mean, what more holy do you want to get than that? And then everybody loves Hashem because you're so relaxed. I mean, how much more holy do you want to get? Okay. Okay. Nevertheless, although this inner light of Atika came down into the world, it did not enter the visual field of those beholding the revelation. Instead, it hovered beyond the edge of conscious perception, effectively invisible. Okay, that's why they did not understand what we're understanding now. This is what the Alter Rebbe is saying. I'm not making this up. This is the words of the Alter Rebbe. You can read it in the Hebrew. Lights that can be grasped and integrated are called inner and internalized. Arpnimi. Lights that are present but too high or deep or vast to be contained within their vessel of consciousness are described as surrounding or hovering or makif. So the light of Atika, the Atikun, which is like Hashem's essence, that held the inner secrets of the Torah could not integrate into the nation at that time. It literally could not fit into their minds. They just couldn't get how to use this correctly and all that stuff. It took all these years of trial and error and suffering and whatever it is to be able to finally get, how to use it right and what does this mean and all that stuff and the beauty of it. It literally cannot, even at the Edenic level of development that they attained at Sinai. This place, the light of Atika, the Atikim formed a kind of invisible halo around the integrated lights of the revealed Torah, enclosing them as if in a sphere of radiant consciousness. So the Alter Rebbe himself is saying that they did not understand whatever we understood then is not the deepest truth of Hashem. It's not the truth about Hashem's essence. It's very superficial and in accordance to the state that they were at that time. So as we become closer to Geula, we're becoming more refined, and that's why a lot of the things that even permissible things are no longer done because we're learning how to have more pneumious relationships. And a lot of things that we thought were Judaism is not really Yiddishkeit, and we're understanding that more. It's like our own, like we created ourselves, our own stress that we created was really nothing to do with Hashem. It actually pushed us away from Hashem. I know that, when I go in a certain way, I would, be upset, angry at Hashem because I created my own preconceived notions of how Hashem has to show up according to what I do and all that stuff. And when I let go of that, then I have a relationship with Hashem. So I'll just finish on this, page 16, and that's it. So this is why the Talmud describes the relationship formed between Israel and Hashem at Sinai as betrothal, interpreting the day of his espousal's engagement as a reference to the revelation at Sinai. What was the word in Hebrew? 1 second. Okay, I'll remember it soon. In both cases, engagement and Sinai are only the most superficial layers of the couple. As the couple enter into active relationship while their inner essence stays unengaged and assumes a position of surrounding light. The vessel of the relationship is not developed enough to hold the full intensity of their inner selves. For this reason, the classic symbol of betrothal is a ring, a circular ornament that surrounds the finger. And the groom, I hear some noise. Okay. Somebody could mute themselves. I don't know. The vessel of the relationship is not developed enough to hold the full intensity of the inner selves. For this reason, the classic symbol of betrothal is a ring, a circular ornament that surrounds the finger. And when the groom proposes and speaks the halachic formula of engagement, behold, you are sanctified, mikudeshes, to me, by this ring, he effects two mergers. Number one, the superficial layers of himself and his beloved enter into active and committed relationship. Okay? When it just brings to mind, do you ever hear like these, like not from people, they lived together for years, right? And they got along. The minute they tie the knot, they get divorced. Why is that? Because as long as they were betrothed, if you want to call it, they weren't really true to themselves. They were always on a show. The minute you're married, the show comes off. And so you get to reveal, like you get to know the person, you get to really know the person. And so sometimes it's not very pretty, but it's work to actually channel all these truths about the person into a holy way, which is beautiful that we're able, like through Malchus, to finally be able to actually affect it in a beautiful way, which we were sort of more limited to in the past. And their respective core levels of soul bond to the vessel of relationship as surrounding lights. Okay, so they're bound under the chuppah, they're bound as one and they become one, but it's not something they always feel. So it's more something like external to them. So it's like the binding of the neshama is something that's like surrounds them. They don't always feel that they're one. Through this work of Geula, we're finally going to feel as one. So that's going to be like when people are actually going to have a real marriage, that's when Hashem will be able to have a real marriage with us, which is quite interesting. As much as you know, the chuppah connected us, that face-to-face unity sort of remained in the past as a sort of like a saivev unity. Like we're really one, but we don't really feel one, because you know what, we weren't really able to feel one because nobody was really being true to themselves. And so as we become more true to ourselves and allow the masculine to become more true to themselves, then we're actually it's not going to be a saivev unity anymore. It's going to be we're going to feel it. So okay, so that is for today. Anybody have anything to say or anything they want to add?
Thank you so much. This is so amazing. Every week it's amazing. But I want to say something that, like, I think a couple weeks ago, I was taking a walk and this came to me, and then everything about today reminded me about it, that this understanding, you know, of the 6 days of creation, and then like man was born. Like I always understood as, right, like Hashem made the world and put everything in it so that man can then be created so he can do the work. Like, you know, the land needs to be created so he can, you know, farm the land and have the animals so he can, you know, do whatever, all the work. But then it was like, it hit me one day and I was like, wow, because I was looking, you know, at the beauty. I was probably in a forest or whatever. And I was like, no, it's that Hashem made the whole world like as if a king is making a palace for his queen. And first he puts in like the beautiful furniture and paints it exactly in the color that she wants and brings in everything. And he says, don't come in yet until, like, I want to surprise you. I want you to only be comfortable in luxury. And then it's like the palace is ready. He's like, okay, now queen, now it's fit for you. So it's like what you were saying about seeing the Torah from a different perspective. I was like, wow, like everything, all this beauty and everything that Hashem put in the world. He's like, okay, now I'm ready for my queen to be in this world, to use it, not to be like, I'm so holy, I have to separate. No, it's like, Hashem made the world for us.
Basi Lagani, okay? I have this beautiful world. I want you to not just enjoy the world. I want you to have the most pleasure you could get from this physical, beautiful world. Because the beautiful world is me, you know, to take something from nothing. The Rebbe says it's a very miraculous energy, you know, because everything's really energy, and to make it into something substantial and beautiful and colorful. And not only in the world of action, we could like touch Hashem that close. And that's really Hashem, like in all his glory. Like, this is me as a flower. This is me as a this. This is me as that, you know. But in order to really enjoy the palace, you know, you got to go through all this preparation to finally enjoy the palace to the highest extent. You know, like even like somebody who feels like they're a poor, like a low class person, they can't enjoy the palace as much as somebody who feels like they're royalty. You know what I mean? There's something more enjoyable when you're royalty. You know what I mean? So all this preparation was pashut so that when we finally are ready, we could enjoy the world. Guess what? It's shocking news. The world is the palace. The physical pleasures of the world is it. That's it. That is it. And it's just about how to enjoy it the most, right? If you waste it, it's not enjoyable. If you're not tuned in and you're just doing it out of habit, it's not enjoyable. But if you're very tuned in and you enjoy the color and the pleasure and the da-da-da, and you know it's Hashem and you know, whatever, all that, then it's more pleasure. That's all. That's the whole purpose. I want to have this relationship of pleasure with you, and I'm keeping you away from it until it's going to be ready for you to have the most pleasure in this physical, mundane world, this beautiful world. That's the goal. The world is the goal, not the spirituality. Spirituality is just preparation of how to. It's like somebody who really knows art can now enjoy the art in the museum, but the art is the main thing, not the knowing. It's the art itself. And so all that preparation is to be able to go into the world and see the beautiful world and get the most pleasure out of it. And that is only when we're connected to our essence and tuned in to, what Hashem wants to reveal through us at each time, at every moment, and be true to ourselves. Okay. Anybody else have something to say before we okay. So thank you so much, and we will to be continued. This is great that we're continuing to explore and to talk about it and integrate everything into our lives. And so, just like the Alter Rebbe says, it's a process. It's a process, and practice makes perfect. And put it into practice. The more we put into practice, the more we can receive more. But you got to put it into practice. It can't just be in your head. It has to be as a way of life. The more it's a way of life, the more Hashem is going to reveal to us, and the more pleasure we're going to have in this world.
Amen.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, take care. All the best. Okay.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
My pleasure. My pleasure.